Salut French students, welcome to video 3 of chapitre 2, and the concept that we're going to be talking about in this video is called l'infinitif, and I'm sure you can recognize this as an English word too. The English translation of this word would be the infinitive. We have this very same thing in English. What I'm going to be teaching you about here in French exists in our own language too. So an infinitive verb is simply just the simplest form of that verb. It's the verb without any changes or adjustments made to it. So if I take a verb like talk in English, I can put it in different forms. I can say I talk, you talk, he, she, it talks. I add an S ending when I use the third person, right? We talk, they talk. In English, our verbs don't really change that much according to the pronoun that comes before it, but in French, Spanish, Italian, all these languages that are similar to each other, they all have very different endings that go with each of those pronouns. But before we kind of get into learning about how to make all of those different changes to verbs, which we call conjugations, the first one we really need to learn about is the infinitive. It's just the simplest base form of a verb. So as it tells us here to name an activity in French, use the verb in the infinitive. It's the base form of the verb that you find listed in the dictionary. So English infinitives begin with to. So, if I just want a list of a bunch of verbs in English, infinitive verbs, I can do that. To walk, to play, to study, to go out, to see. I mean, there are thousands of them, right? And we use the to form of verbs in English in a lot of cases too. So this is something we have in common with French. It's the same kind of grammar. Okay, so infinitives in French have different endings. They can have an ER ending, like in the verb jouer, which means to play. They can have an IR ending, like in the verb dormir, which is to sleep. They can have an OIR ending, such as the verb voir, to see, or an RE ending, like être, to be. Maybe another one that you might have already seen with an RE ending would be apprendre, which is to learn. Okay? And whenever you have two or more verbs together, the first verb is conjugated, so it's put in a different form according to the pronoun that comes before it, but the verb that comes after is in the infinitive form. So let's look at some sentences or questions. So we've seen this form already in chapitre 1. Qu'est-ce que tu aimes faire? So what do you like? So tu aimes. This comes from the verb, the infinitive aimer, which is an ER verb, kind of like jouer. But when it comes after the pronoun tu, you, it changes to tu aimes. That's how we know that we're saying you like. Okay, the verb that comes right after it is going to be an infinitive verb. It's not changed or conjugated in any way. And we do the same thing in English. So what do you like to do? So faire is the infinitive in French. In English, we would translate it as to do. That's the infinitive in English. J'aime jouer au golf. So I like. Now we're conjugating aimer to go along with je. And notice that we don't say je aime. We use a contraction here. So we drop the E and then add M to that to become j'aime. So, j'aime jouer. I like to play golf. Okay, so jouer is our infinitive form there. In English, we'd translate that as to play. Another question form you saw in chapter 1, chapitre 1, is est-ce que tu voudrais sortir? Okay, so tu voudrais sortir would mean you would like to go out if you wrote it as a sentence. Est-ce que transforms this into a question. So, est-ce que tu voudrais sortir? So, do you like to go out or would you like to go out? So, tu voudrais means you would like. Sortir means to go out. So, Tu voudrais sortir. And then finally, je préfère. Okay, this comes from the verb préférer, which means to prefer, of course. When I put it with je, I, it becomes je préfère. And the verb that comes after is in the infinitive form, and that is to sleep. Je préfère dormir. Okay, so you can see that we can put two verbs together. The first one is a conjugated one, which just means it changes its form according to the pronoun or who is doing that thing. And the verb that comes after it is in the infinitive, the form you'd find in the dictionary. Okay, so one particular verb that we learn about in chapitre 2 is jouer à et jouer de. They kind of mean different things. Both of them mean to play, but jouer à means to play a game or sports. Jouer de and its related forms like du, de la, de le, de, depending on what comes after it, means to play an instrument. So I can say jouer à des jeux vidéo. So if you're a gamer, this might be a useful expression for you. Jouer à des jeux. So to play video games. Jouer au baseball. And this is jouer au because we're combining à plus le baseball. When you have à plus le, it becomes au. If you have à plus de, they stay separated. Okay, faire du vélo. We can also use the verb faire to talk about doing sports too. So faire du vélo means to go bike riding, cycling. Du in this case is de plus le, faire du vélo, or faire de l'exercice, so to do exercise, to work out. Okay, in this case, we're combining de plus the LE contraction of l'exercice to say faire de l'exercice. Okay, jouer is jouer de plus the article that comes after it is talking about playing most musical instruments. So jouer du piano would be jouer de le piano, but de and le come together to form du. Jouer de la guitare, okay, when I have de plus la, they stay separated when it's feminine. So jouer de la guitare. Okay, so that's jouer à et jouer de. Okay, and a little bit more about jouer à and jouer de. Okay, so when you're talking about these activities in the negative form, you might remember this from chapter 1 when we talked about il y a and il n'y a pas de. So it's kind of the same as with un, une, and des. Du, de la, and de le change to de when they follow a negative verb. Okay, so if I say tu joues de la guitare, if I want to answer in the negative to that, I'm going to say non, je ne joue pas de guitare. I'm not going to say je ne joue pas de la guitare. Je ne joue pas de guitare. If I ask tu fais du sport le week-end, in the negative, I would answer non, je ne fais pas de sport. I wouldn't say je ne fais pas du sport. So we're dropping the un or the une or the de in that case. This isn't the case with au. Okay, so if I say non, je ne joue pas au football américain, je fais beaucoup d'exercices. Okay, so in that case, I don't change anything with au. So this only applies to un, une, and de. When you need to make them negative, it becomes de, or de with the apostrophe. Okay, and hopefully you're seeing some exercises that are helping you practice that in MindTap. Okay, so that's everything with the infinitive. You'll see videos 4, 5, and 6 coming up this week on other concepts that are coming up in Chapter 2, Chapitre 2. And I'll be back to you soon with video 4.